All right.
We're on?
Yes, we are. We are conducting now a second interview session with Mr. Morris Hinken of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, we had done earlier a full interview with Mr. Hinken at Byron Center, where we recorded the basic outline of his story here, and now what we're doing is creating this as a supplemental file to add some additional stories to the larger picture. Just quickly by way of review, Mr. Hinken served in 32nd Signal Battalion. He was initially in Northern Europe, and then at the end of the war went out to Okinawa. So he's in both theaters. So with that in mind, Mr. Hinken, why don't you start adding stories? You first note you have refers to Kaiser Wilhelm's headquarters.
Yeah, when we were in Belgium, we run across Kaiser Wilhelm's headquarters of World War I, way back in the woods, and it was a beautiful place. I mean, it was like a palace. But that was where he had his offices and headquarters, and he had a lot of other people around, like, what's the other ones? Can't remember them, but anyway, there were some pictures in there of all these people.
And were these generals or members of the royal family? Or?
They were generals. Ludendorff, I can remember that name,
right.
But I can't quite remember.
Because he was the principal commander, and you might have had Hindenburg, or you might have had some lower down.
My little cards. I got one of the little cards, but I can't find it. But they got the generals on there too.
Right. So when you got there, do you think that it had been set up as a museum, or?
No, I don't know, because it was pretty quiet. They had a caretaker, but when you got in the building, then it was lots of stuff in the offices, telephone, Kaiser's telephone, and there was Belgium and German flags and all that stuff that went with the headquarters, you know. And then we used that. That was nice because it had been an orphanage, and there was a lot of 7-year-old size cribs in that place, but they had mattresses in them. But we never was on a mattress, but then we just take the crib side down and we lay on our sides, you know. But that was nice. It was a mattress. We had never saw it.
Now, if it had been used as an orphanage, then maybe that's what the Belgians were doing with it, but until the Germans came back.
That's possible. I don't know just how this, but it was in nice shape. Somebody's been taking care of that place. And it had, we stayed in there until the Americans, they got a bunch of their high-gefluten guys too, their generals and everything, so we had to move out, otherwise we were in there. So we went to the horse barn. They had a nice horse barns back there, nice horse where the horses stayed. Mm-hmm. And that's where a couple of our units stayed in there, because we couldn't stay in the other one no more, which was kind of a sad. But anyway, we went to the horse barn. We slept in there, and that worked out real good. Okay. But then quite a few years later, we went back there. I was visiting the places, and we went back to this place. We could hardly find it. That was at Spa. I knew about where it was. Mm-hmm. So we asked a couple of people along the road who were looking around too, and I thought maybe they were visitors too, which they were. But they knew all about this place. And we asked them, where's this Kaiser's place? He said, oh, we know where that is. We'll take you over there. So they did. And then the one thing I thought, now, if you know all about this, I said, you ought to know why were the horse barns all dismantled, you know. Of course, we didn't have any horses, but this one gal says to me, he said, you slept in the horse barn, but we ate the horses. And that's what probably did too, I don't know. Yeah. But that's where we were.
And do you remember roughly when it was that you were there? Was this in the winter, late 44 or in 45?
It was late 45, I guess. No, 44. Yeah. Just before 45.
Okay. So sort of right before the Battle of the Bulge, or because I don't think the Germans got all the way to Spa. They got close.
No, not the Second World War. They did probably.
At least not in the Bulge. Anyway. Okay. You had that. All right. Next entry here, referring to holding up a convoy in the rain.
Okay. That was sad too. I probably shouldn't confess this, but I'll have to do it, I guess. Just a minute.
We're going to hear the real story.
Well, I'm sure the statute of limitations has run out, so probably safe.
when we left just before the Battle of the Bulge, we were traveling to move up, and we were on a side hill, a nice valley down here, and a beautiful road, and all these beautiful trees around there, probably that big around, and they were smooth barked and everything. And our outfit got stopped there, and we couldn't figure out why, but they had knocked out a bridge, a railroad bridge up ahead, and it was clearing it out so we could get through, you know. So we stopped there, but we stopped there quite a while. We got a little itchy, you know, and we had, everybody had a jackknife on him, you know. So what did we do? We scraped these big old initials on these nice trees. Oh, then we had oodles of guy initials going up and down. We ruined a few trees. And about 24 years later, we went back, and I went back there with my son-in-law and my daughter and my wife. And I told them, I said, now this road, we're going to come where my initials are on a tree. She says, you can't remember a tree where your initials were. I said, I'll show you that tree. So I knew it was a right road. I said, stop right here. There's my initials. They're still been sealed pretty good yet. I must have carved them pretty deep.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I have to confess and apologize to the Belgians because I ruined a lot of their trees.
Well, if the trees were still alive, then
they were.
Then you hadn't done too badly on it.
Yeah, there were a lot of them. There was a lot of initials on it. They were so surprised I could find that back.
Okay. Let's see. Next on your list here, you got.
Oh, my bathing suits.
Oh, the gals in the white bathing suit?
Mm-hmm.
This was quite the ordeal too, especially for young guys when they were in their 20s, you know, and so on. But anyway, we left the beach. We were between the beach and St. Lo. We went up kind of a back roads, and we came to a little French village. On the outside of the village, I don't know why, we didn't get into the village, but on the outside there was two big swimming pools. And I don't know what they used them for. But anyway, when we got there, we couldn't read French, so we didn't know whether it said stop or get out or what. So we went right in, and the guys, we washed up in one of those swimming pools. We haven't seen water for probably 10, 15 days. So, so that's what we did. But in the other pool on the other side, here stands two nice French beauties. They had nice, bright bathing suits on, white. Not skimpy ones like you have today, but I'm really sharp. And the guys were joshing with them, you know. And finally, they two gals, they dove in, you know. And then they came up later and they jumped on the edge, you know, what do they call it around there? But then they looked at each other, and when those parachutes got wet, they were transparent.
Oh.
It's just like wearing a piece of glass. So we got a big charge out of that. But then we had to move on.
Well, it's sort of a reminder, really, of what condition probably the French were in at that time, because they had been short and low of a lot of things, and this parachute cloth was wonderful stuff.
A lot of them, because they had parachute drops now just a little ways away.
Yeah.
And the farmers were using them to cover their hay up and everything.
But clearly they had tried them as bathing suits before. At least not in front of a male audience.
Hadn't gotten
No,
it.
we got a charge out of that. We still laugh about it. Well, while we were in Germany too, there's some other things we'd run across was we found a German youth camp. It was specifically, I think this group was for 12-year-olds, and they had everything for youth, just like the Army, only youth.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I even confiscated one of their helmets. It's a small one, you couldn't wear it, but I still got it. But while we were in there, they had so much stuff and flags, but all the guys, they wanted a flag, so I never did get a flag out of there. But I don't.
As far as you can tell, was this all for boys, or did they have?
Oh yeah, well, where we were, it was all
Yeah.
boys. They could have had other places too, but this was quite a big camp.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Aside from the flags, did you see much evidence of it being sort of a Hitler youth camp? Because that's what.
oh,
most of
I
the-
think it was a Hitler's youth camp, all right. They had all the swastikas on their little helmets, you know, and all that stuff already when those kids.
Mhm.
They were programming was pretty good.
And of course, some of them were being sent into the war just a couple of years after that too. They were not very old, some of them, in the later stage of the war.
Yeah, I felt sorry for, specifically for one young of these fellas. We'd get into some of these towns, you know, and we'd confiscate all their guns. So they just, burgomaster, he just ordered everybody to throw your guns on their truck, American's truck. So they did that. And here stands a little fella, maybe 10, 12 years old. He had an air rifle. And he threw that thing on there. He didn't have to do that, but I suppose they told him it would confiscate all the weapons, so he throws his air rifle on there. You know, when we got down the road a ways, and when we stopped, and I still could find that rifle. So I got that hold of that thing. Of course, we were miles from where he was. I still got that air rifle. And I often think of that kid, oh man, that must have broke his heart.
Yeah.
Now, when you shipped out and you went back toward the States, did they go through all your stuff and check what you were bringing?
We mailed this home, so we didn't have to take through.
Okay.
I had a good friend in the mail office there, and he says, you put it in a box of some kind, and I'll mail it for you. So and everything got home that I mailed to him.
Okay. That's important there to note on that one. All right. Okay. The next thing listed here is a bullfight.
Oh, yeah. When we were still in Marseille, France, we were there quite a while. But anyway, one of the Sundays we were there, the bullfights are a big thing over there, just where we were. They had advertisings all over about different matadors and all that stuff. So it was a Sunday, and our outfit says, oh, anybody want to go to a bullfight today? I said, you're welcome to it. So we had, I don't know how many truckloads of GIs went. So we were situated. I think they probably knew we were coming. We were situated on one side of the little arena, or whatever they got. And all these Frenchmen were all the way around, you know, and when this bullfight started, when this matador got the best of the bull, then all these French people were going, you know, just that's what they wanted, you know. And pretty soon the bull got the best of a matador, then we all chimed in. It was crazy. But I saw a bullfight, and this one bull, he got the best of a matador. And this matador, he didn't know where to go anymore, so he run to the wall and he jumped over halfway, and that bull after him, he banged that bull right in there, and I wonder if he crushed his feet. Probably fell over on him. I don't know. I can imagine what happened. But that was so funny. All these GIs, we really could make a lot of noise.
All right. Next item on the list refers to rope ladders and Okinawa.
Yeah, I don't think I finished that story on Okinawa. When we got to Okinawa, this ship of ours couldn't get to the docks very well, so we were out of ways. And then to get on land, they had these smaller boats down below, but we had to come down these rope ladders to get down there. Lots of guys for our outfit had to go down first. But some of these guys were so weak that they had to carry their duffel bag and so on, and they couldn't even hang on to those things anymore. I could hardly bear it, doing it in your duffel bag, and you had some weapons with you, you know, in your helmet, and it was really rough going. So a lot of those duffel bags, they lost them when they go down, and they'd pop over there, and they'd break open, and there's guys, all their nice stuff laying all over, so they kind of collected it for them, you know, but it was kind of sad too, losing all their nice stuff.
Now, why were they weak?
Man, we were on board there for 2 months on that ship. We had no place to exercise.
Okay.
Especially the younger guys, the smaller fellas. They had all that time, a rough time.
Yeah, because you couldn't keep a lot of the muscles in tone or upper body strength or whatever.
No,
nothing to do.
We saw them, and the ones that came down when we saw were our light fellas that didn't carry much weight, you know, so they lost their stuff, and they picked it up. But then when we got down there, then they got some vehicles down there, from the Army, I suppose, and we got on shore, and we went under the wings of these B-36s, I think. I don't know.
Right, maybe B-29s.
B-29, there you are. And we thought, oh man, look at the length and But then we went through, we got out of the airport, and they brought us out in the field way down there. And it was a potato patch. We didn't know it at night. At night, we just bugged down us, but they told us where we were going to be. But the next morning, here comes right along while we got up, some of these guys digging potatoes. Right between all these guys that were listed there.
In the Okinawan farmers coming out?
Yeah. There wasn't too many, but they were digging right while we were still sleeping. Well, we didn't sleep either because that first night up there, we didn't know what the Japanese, how they acted, you know, so I was scared. I don't think I slept all night either. Just couldn't imagine. I was waiting for daylight, but when daylight came, we didn't know what else was coming off. But then we found out, we got up and I had chow and what have you, and here on the side hill by us was a group of Japanese. There was 26 of them, I think. But anyway, they had a sign made. They were there, they wanted to surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a sign made, and it says, "No sheet." S-H-E-E-T they had on there instead of "no shoot."
Mm-hmm.
But we knew what they meant. So here those guys all are fully armed, and we didn't know what to do with them first. So they were there. And there's another outfit down there came to us, to our rescue, I guess. And then we had to process all them guys. And our commanding officer, he'd say, "One," like that. He'd point his finger up, and then he'd motion like this. So one guy had to come. And one at a time, all the time, fully armed. Now, why was that?
Now, was this after the official Japanese surrender, or was it while the war was still officially going on?
It had, no, I think the war was still going on.
Do you remember when you got to Okinawa?
Oh, no, we got there the 2nd of September.
Okay, so they had surrendered by then.
Yeah, an atomic bomb had been
Yeah.
dropped and everything there.
Yeah.
But the day we landed is when MacArthur signed the peace treaty on the ship,
Missouri.
Missouri. You're right. I was going to say Mississippi, but that's Missouri.
Okay. So these were just Japanese who'd been just hiding out
Yeah.
up in the hills and didn't know what was going
Must have been
on.
terrifying.
We found out, we thought, why did they do that to us? Well, they were watching us, and they wanted to get the green troops. They didn't want to surrender anybody that had been on Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
It probably wouldn't have lasted very long, so they wanted to get these green troops.
Okay. Well, at this point, with the war over, I mean, were there still kind of guards posted and patrols and things, or were you just camped out waiting for something to happen?
For us, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were going to still do some communications, I know that.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know exactly what all went on there when they surrendered, but we had all their rifles laid there, and then we found one fella, he had gangrene over his whole arm, and I suppose he thought, shoot me because what good am I, all this. But the first thing they did, the guys looked at that thing and said, "We're gonna get you over to our Army hospital over here." So that's probably what they did, but he probably figured that would be the end of him, but that wasn't. But they treated him real good, Americans did, as far as I know.
Now, aside from the fellow who had gangrene, what condition did they seem to be in?
Fairly good. Of course, they swiped food and everything at night. That's one thing they said when we got there. He says, those guys will probably come in camp at night, and probably dress like ours, and they'll steal everything. They had all their clothes, underclothes on, our shorts and our shirts and everything. And we had one fellow over there who lost a brother on Okinawa, and he didn't treat these guys too good. After they took their uniforms out, he'd get a hold of their GI shirts, and he'd just pull them right off. He didn't even wait for them. I thought it was kind of mean, but he was, after all, he lost a brother.
Well, did anybody eventually stop him, or did he do it a few times and just give up? Or?
Well, just the ones that had the shirts on, American. They probably had some too, but all their underclothes were same old GI green that we had, exactly.
All right. Next item on your list says 90 days, no mail.
Yeah, I put that on there because, we had gone to Okinawa. We already had 21,000 miles from Marseille, France, to Panama, and under a little bit. We didn't go straight to get to the Japanese, of course, submarines, areas. It was 21,000 miles. That took 58 days. And we couldn't mail anything out when we were in France, so that was probably 15 days or so. And we took the whole trip. And then by the time that we got over there, our mail got home, it was 90 days. That's 3 months. And my mother, my sister, I said, my mother was so faithful going to that mailbox every day, just hoping for a letter. So, but finally, 3 months, you finally got one.
Now, when you had been in Europe before that, before they shipped you out, did you write on a regular basis?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did. I think I wrote quite a bit, much more than my friends around me in the army there. I got a lot of letters from home too, from the church, you know, and so, and the pastor at First Allendale, every month he would send a letter to all the servicemen. And we had, let's see what we had. We had 37 from our church. That was a lot. But that was a third of them, and the whole township was in our church. So he knew a lot. And we'd get a letter. He'd send a letter to all these little grinder, you know, turn one out, you know. And that was so nice to get all the news. Yeah, then my friends I was used to write. In fact, I used to write to your mother every once in a while.
Now, during those 90 days, were you getting any mail, or did you wait until you got to Okinawa? Did any come while you were on Okinawa?
Oh,
By the end of it?
later, but not right away. You had to write home, and then that letter had to come back again, so it took a little while. But that was all this email, what they used to call
email,
it.
yeah.
Email, yeah.
Yeah. That was work nice. What I liked about it, you could only write so much on it. So you could write that and send it. You couldn't have to sit there half a day and write a letter. Yeah.
Our mom always said that your letters were nicer and neater than the ones she sent, and she figured you were in a foxhole writing letters, and they came so nice and neat, good handwriting and legible. She thought they were better than hers.
Okay, and then the last item I see on here, it says, "I'll be home for Christmas."
I always thought that. When I left for the Army at Camp Custer, I said, I'll be home for Christmas. When I was stationed there, finally let us go. So I got to go home for a day. So, and I said, I'll be home for Christmas. And when we were in Europe, during the Battle of the Bulge, I told them just before that, I'll be home for Christmas. Because I thought, well, the war is going to be ending soon, and then I can go home for Christmas, but that didn't happen. So, but then when I got to Okinawa, and then when I was going to go home, I wrote on my letters, I'll be home for Christmas. But I didn't make it to Tacoma, Washington. That's as far on Christmas Eve. Yeah, that. You know, that's lots of things that I went through. And the more I think of them, the closer get to me now. I kind of forgot about them, and especially when this happened here. I can think of so many things now if I just go day by day what happened. Some real neat things like swimming suits and so on, but then others not so neat. I think the most scared I ever was on Okinawa that first night. Not knowing what Japanese, we had never seen one. It's kind of odd.
Didn't you say the mongoose were?
Oh yeah, that night too. It was along that patch there. There was a grass fields, you know, and then these mongoose, they would be coming around too, and the guys would say on guard, "What are we going to do with that mongoose?" I said, "Shoot them," but they didn't. But they did kind of scare us though, because you don't know if the Japanese crawling through there or not. So.
Were they coming and trying to get your food too?
Yeah, they did. Of course, we didn't know it. We didn't know what was going on that first night, you know. But the first night they did tell us, if you get in a chow line, make sure you know that guy ahead of you and that guy behind you. And the other guy does the same thing. You don't know Japanese because it's been done. Japanese get in a chow line dressed like an American and so on. Get their food.
Yeah. When you were on Okinawa, how much did you see of the local population there? Because you mentioned there were the people who came out to harvest the potatoes. Was that about all you saw?
Oh, you'd see one of them walking around now and then, but not too many. I have a book on Okinawa, and that shows all the population there. What the infantry and so had run into, these people. Then they were dug in the hills too, and they'd have to. I don't know how they warned them, I guess, but they'd finally come out because I got pictures of a lot of these families coming out of these holes. So they've been locked up in there for a while.
I know that what they did in some places, including on Guam, where there were a lot who were hiding in the hills, was they actually at a certain point got Japanese POWs who volunteered to kind of go out and help find the people in the hills and bring them on in. Because one of the fellows I interviewed who was stationed there actually had a newspaper report where he showed a picture of not only 5 soldiers but 2 women, because the Japanese sent women to the various places where they were based, around there, and so they had come out of the hills, a year after the war was over. So
some of them were locked. Some of them didn't come out for a long time. I understand, but these apparently wanted to give up. Thought they had enough. Yep. Let's see, what else could I say?
Well, when we were talking about some of your actual campaign experiences in Europe, I think one of the things that you ran into is having a hard time figuring out exactly where you were in terms of what the rest of the battle or the campaign was going on around you, especially in the Battle of the Bulge, which is actually normal, because they don't always tell you.
No, that's for sure. But, I don't, as far as knowing exactly where we were in Germany or Belgium or Luxembourg. We didn't have a map, so we just assumed we were there. That's about it. But a lot of water over the dam, I tell you.
All right. Anything else you can think of here that you'd like to throw in as our addendum to the interview?
Dad, you had a funny story about marching one day when you were marching. Remember that?
Yeah, that was back at Camp Crowder.
This was, okay.
We were at Camp Crowder, and the 32nd, we had a real good marching outfit. I mean, the cadence was nice and everything, and they could follow commands and everything. But then they had this dress parade Saturday afternoon when all the big officers you'd have to parade by them, and then present arms and go up there, and turn around, leave everything coordinated, And it was too. We had a good outfit, and we were marching good, and halt, 1, 2. We had to turn right, and when we did that, the guy forgot the commands. And he said, "Whoa!" And some guys would have had something. Oh, what a mess right in front of the stand! Whoa! Here we spent all that time training. Get it right.
And it was in front of the major?
Right in front of the high command. I don't remember. That was probably more than a major, I would think. But that was sad. That was. We said. I thought, God, all that training we did, we were perfect. We blew it all.
So who forgot the command?
The lieutenant who marched us up there. And he was a good officer too. He just got frustrated, I guess, and he forgot this halt, 1, 2, and then we should have been on. And he had to back up and dress right and get all them lines straightened out right in front of him.
Some lighter moments.
Yeah, that was a lighter moment, all right. Yeah, those gals in that suit, that was a funny one, I tell you.
All right.
Did I tell you about holding up the convoy in the rain? I can tell
Yeah,
you
I
about
did.
it.
Well, you mentioned I asked about that, and you started talking about the trees, but not really much about the convoy. You said that you were sitting in the convoy and you were just stuck and you were waiting, and you carved in the trees, but that was all you mentioned.
Well, that was, yeah, this was a different time when I was holding up the convoy. When we were in Atherstone, England, and we were moving up to Southampton to load our vessels. And when we left there, it was still daylight, and of course, long evenings in the summer. But then it got dark, and we still had quite a ways to go yet. It was in the dark, and when you're in the dark, you watch those little cat eyes ahead of you. So you could follow that, but everything else, the Liberator, you just watch for those cat eyes. So,
And can you describe what you mean by cat eyes?
they had those little, I would say about that high, about that wide, on every van, every Jeep vehicle.
So,
But you couldn't see them. You had to look this way.
so they were covering most of the headlight and left a small opening for the light to go straight out.
But they had an rear end too,
Mhm.
so you couldn't bump them. You had to watch
Okay.
for those cat eyes at night, and we did that. But then it started to rain, and then I fell asleep. My Jeep driver wasn't supposed to fall asleep, but he did too. And then after a while, we don't know how we were there. Of course, the people behind us, or the convoy there, they stopped right behind us, watched some cat eyes, and they were there, so they stayed there too. But anyway, I don't know how long this was, but pretty soon, here comes our commanding officer, or our officer in our outfit. And he was so mad. It's a good thing that I had a helmet over my head. It's a good thing that he didn't recognize me as being his officer, I mean, his non-com.
Mhm. So your driver managed to fall asleep and stop the vehicle?
No.
So
Well, stop, the guy ahead of us stopped, so we stopped.
So he stopped, and while you were waiting, then he fell asleep?
Yeah,
So you're
and
still stuck?
then you
Yeah.
didn't see them leave, so
Yep.
they left. I don't know how long they were gone, but finally Lieutenant Walters must have found out, where's them guys anyway, so he came back and he had a few words for us.
All right. I think that gets everything on your list here anyway.
Yeah, you did, I almost forgot that one. Yep. But, I was gonna say something more about the Kaiser's place there. Oh, we went back there too, 24 years later.
Well, you mentioned that you found it again, because
Oh,
the
yeah.
people took you there or showed you where it was.
That's, it was really nice, when we went back there, then, they had a caretaker there. And my son-in-law played basketball over there, so he had the team's car.
Mm-hmm.
He was an American playing on
Right.
Heidelberg. He had the team's car, and that was a Volkswagen. You know how those aren't too big, you know. But we rode it. That's what we used over there. My daughter says to me, I had just gotten back from Australia, New Zealand. I was gone for quite a while, a month, I think. And right after that, my daughter calls and she says, hey, you ought to come down. Heidelberg is still in the games over here and having their playoffs, and they got 2 more games to go. So, oh man, this is a chance, because he had a car and everything, and he had an apartment. We could stay there, and everything was set up for us. So we went back there, and I thought, God, when I get back to Allendale Telephone Company, I'm never going to have a job or not for 6 weeks right out of the summer. But the fellow that took over, he could handle anything, so he did too. So I don't think the board ever noticed I was gone.
So did the caretaker let you in?
The caretaker, well, when we came up to the gate, we had this German car, and it was green, and him being 6'8", and I'm not too short, we got out of this car, and this gal over here had a enclosure with fence and had 2 police dogs in there, and we said something to her, but I don't know if she could understand. But then when I got out, I can't recall how I got a hold of her, but when we made some communications, and because she thought that big guy got a German vehicle and all that stuff. This could be problems, you know. She's going to get those police dogs out. She doesn't blame her. But she never did get them out. She was right by the fence. She could have let them
You had
out.
a photo.
Pardon?
You had a photo. Remember you showed her a picture?
Oh, yeah.
That's how she let you in.
That's right. I never brought that up. We had photos of this place with myself on it. And that's why she let us in. I showed her that. I was an American, you know, visiting. And she showed us all around. She showed us everything, but I says, how about down below where the wine cellar is? She says, oh, no, you can't see that. She says, I don't know, I didn't want to see it anyway, but at that time, it was a retreat for some organization.
Mm-hmm.
They were using it. You know, still in nice shape, too. Yeah, that was a far cry, sleeping in the hay from getting out of that nice mattress. That's the same time the sleeping bags came up with the zipper, you know. And, some of those guys would get in there, you know, they couldn't find the zipper back out when they had to get back out, so they'd go to the bathroom or something, you know. They always had fun with those zippers.
So they introduced the sleeping bag while you were out?
Yep, it's the first time we had them. Otherwise, we just had a couple of old blankets, you know. Lay in a foxhole with those nice, beautiful blankets. Day after day, and they got so dirty. And you finally get to a place where you could slop them in the water and shake them out again. It'd be all right. Our food was really good over there. Our mess hall, they had some good cooks, and whatever they had, they made it do. But over on Okinawa, they'd always have this menu out there, what they're going to have, and it'd always say Australian beef.
Oh.
And you know what mutton tastes like? That was Australian beef, or mutton. Some guys pulling their leg a little bit. Yeah. When I look back, that was a lot of experiences. I'm glad I went through it, but I sure wouldn't want to go back and do it again.
All right then. I think if we got to the end of the list then, I guess we
Yeah, I
probably
think
close
so.
it.
I think that was.
Thank you very much for
and thank you for
adding the story.
stopping in again.
All right.
Kind of nice.